Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Road to Purpose, episode 5. My name is Angus. Welcome back to the show. We're back with another episode related to self improvement, and this podcast is all about that. And today I want to talk about a topic that's very, very dear to my heart, which is language learning and how this actually works as a self improvement tool, I guess. I mean, it doesn't all have to be completely focused towards making money, right? It can help. Self improvement tools can help you grow as a person in multiple different ways, and that's something that this podcast is all about. Is finding what works for you, and perhaps you'll be inspired by one of the topics that I talk about, and that will grab your attention, and then you'll maybe take up a new hobby or take up something that completely changes your life, as I did back in 2020. Now, in the last couple of episodes, we've been talking a lot about working remotely, traveling, solo travel. These are topics that are very dear to my heart, and I can personalize the podcast a lot with these because I have a lot of experience traveling solo. I have a lot of experience working on the road, working from different countries, and that's something that a kind of a unique spin I can give compared to other creators, and that's why I've been keen to talk about it, because I want to set this podcast apart as being being personal. This is my podcast, but with time, I do have plans to bring some guests on. That is a format I would love to explore with this platform. But for now, I've got some more episodes planned for the future related to certain self-improvement topics, and I kind of just want to lay some good foundations for conversation for the first few episodes before I ask a guest to come on or something like that. But I do have some really, really interesting guests in mind. I've got some friends who have inspired me a lot over the last few years of traveling, and I would love to bring their unique perspective onto this podcast, and then they can share their knowledge and wisdom with all of you, all of you listening. Now, as with starting any new project, the podcasts, I've been looking at the statistics, and the statistics for the podcast, like the analytics, the numbers, basically, it's been slow. Expected, but I know for a fact that consistency is key with this. If I keep creating quality content, eventually this snowball will start to pick up. And I've watched numerous creators do it, and quite often the YouTube algorithm, for example, will push creators like myself, who are small creators, into recommended feeds. I've been seeing that a lot over the last year or so, probably. And yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic, and I've been creating. If you perhaps you're watching this from a short that I've created from this podcast, and I've found that's an interesting way to summarize information that I'm talking about here, and it's a great way to draw traffic towards this podcast as well, to bring in new listeners and new viewers. And those have been doing okay numbers. I'm averaging about 400 to 500 views on TikTok for these shorts that are like very highly edited. But as you can see, the raw podcast content is not like that. It's just me talking to a camera and with a very nice microphone. So hopefully the audio quality is good. I've noticed on TikTok the audio gets really distorted and cut up, which I really don't like. But it's a learning process. Creating content like this is still fairly new for me. I've created content previously for a personal brand I was building that I ended up shelving a couple of years ago because I wasn't enjoying it. And then I was creating content for my business, but then that kind of wasn't the right strategy. But this type of content for this medium is perfect. So the short form stuff is perfect because it provides like a taster from the long form product, and long form product is the podcast. So yeah. But anyway, enough about that. Let's talk about language learning, because, well, that's probably something that you haven't heard or spoken about a lot in self-improvement circles. I've only heard of one creator talk about it before. But it was very much that, like, he decided that when he was rich and successful, he wanted to then learn a language, which was Spanish. Now, for the last, how many years now? 4 years. Wow. For the last 4 years, I've been learning Spanish. I'm completely self-taught. And I want to share some secrets of how I got to fluency, because recently I've been living in Bogota and I've got friends that don't speak English, and it's kind of just setting in now that I'm not trying to brag, but my level of Spanish is very good, and I can communicate with and have very close connections over here. And also, for example, I can go on dates completely in Spanish. I could work in Spanish. I'm pretty sure. I've never tried, but I've had contacts get in touch with me related to software related gigs. And nowadays, I'm fairly confident that I could work in Spanish because my level and understanding is so high, and I've practiced speaking so much. And of course, living out here in Latin America for the last 3 months, and then in Spain before that, obviously that really helped. But I would say that my level was still high before that, but this has just really like polished it up. So let's just talk about some of the like key benefits I've seen from learning another language, which might not be immediately obvious. I love to experience new cultures, and I don't think you can truly, truly do that unless you speak the target language of the culture that you want to experience. Now, Spanish is a very, very good choice as a language from this respect because you get access to all countries in Latin America apart from Brazil, and you get access to Spain, like Spanish culture. And if you meet anyone from those countries, you can just talk with them. There are a lot of regional dialects in Spanish, a lot of dialects that change between countries, grammar rules change, like there's regional slang, and these change between regions of countries as well. So it's people say Spanish is an easy language to learn, right? But I don't think there is an easy language to learn. That's the thing, because you have to apply yourself. Now, it's easy from the respect that there's a lot of resources available. But if you're going to take that initiative, then English is the easiest language in the world to learn because it's got the most resources available to learn it. So I don't really buy these comparisons of top 10 easiest languages to learn and then you pick whichever. And I could just be saying that because I've spent 4 years learning Spanish, and then I've had people turn around to me before and say, oh, well, Spanish is an easy language. I'm like, but dude, you haven't heard a Puerto Rican speak, bro. That's like a completely different language, or Chilean. But yeah, out here in Colombia, they've got a lot of accents in this country, and I'm a real big fan of Colombian accents. They sound incredible. There's the Paisa accent from Medellin, which is a very, very famous accent in Spanish. That's a very nice accent. And then from Bogota, there's the Rolo accent, which is less popular, but I really like it. Costeño from the coast. And yes, so you can see that there are some challenges. But in general, coming back to my main point, if you learn Spanish, it's like a key to unlock the culture of all of these countries, because you can meet someone literally in the street and it could evolve into a friendship. You can meet someone in the gym, it could evolve into a friendship, and then you're going to get a unique experience based off of the person that you met. So this actually happened to me over the weekend. I was training in the gym, and a guy came up to me and was like, oh, I really want to practice English. And yeah, we were talking. Okay, this has happened because I'm working from another country, but things happen to me like this in Spanish, and people are often surprised that I can speak Spanish, and then they want to show me their culture because they're like, oh, well, I can actually explain things to you, which is really cool. And that has been one of the biggest advantages to learning a language for me, learning a second language. And English speakers in general are fairly lazy with learning second languages. So when you approach a new person and you speak to them in the language that they speak, and then you say, oh, I'm from England, or you could be from the United States or Australia, they're very impressed by that usually, because it means you've really, really put the effort in to before you went to their country. So I think there's a lot of advantages like that. Like, people are going to be really open and receptive to helping you practice as well if they see that you're a native English speaker, because it's like, well, the whole world wants to learn English, and you've just kind of like bucked the trend as being like one of the few English people that's put the effort in. Honestly, I've had so many great connections that I've met just because I speak Spanish, and so many unique experiences as well. Honestly, I think learning this language was the best thing that I ever did. It's opened so many doors of friendship for me. I've met so many fantastic people and had some fantastic experiences as well because of it. And yeah, I'm very passionate about language learning because of that. So I'm going to give a personal anecdote of how I got started and why I decided to get started with this, because I never took classes in Spanish, with the exception of like, I had some basic Spanish classes in university, but like for a couple of weeks. I think it was like 2 classes, but I like took the 2 classes and then I didn't speak until my final year of uni, penultimate year of uni, actually, second year of uni. So I took some classes, but like I learned very little in them because I don't think in-person classes actually work that well. Hot take. So what happened? So in 2020, as we know, there was a pandemic, and I was in my second year of uni, and I was just kind of uninspired. I was like, I need something else. I need a new hobby to work on, something that's going to be super rewarding and it's going to allow me to meet new people, because we were all stuck in our homes, and like I couldn't go out and like meet new people. But honestly, from the pandemic, I look back at this and I was like, I don't think I would have started learning this language and put the time aside to learn it if it hadn't been for the pandemic. And that's crazy. It's such an amazing thing for me that came out of such a terrible situation. So it's a real silver lining to the cloud for me. So in 2020, I watched a video from a YouTuber called Ikenna. And Ikenna actually over the last few years has become very sick. He's got I think it's like a degenerative illness. It's been really sad to see a guy who's learned so many languages. He's a full polyglot. You should definitely check out his YouTube, by the way. He's got some fantastic videos. But yeah, he was very, very active a few years ago, and then he's got this illness which is basically bedridden him. And he's been working on a language learning app and things like that. I think he's an inspiring guy. Definitely check out his channel if you're listening to this and you want some inspiration for language learning content. But I watched a video of his called it was called something like I learned Spanish to fluency in 7 days. And obviously he didn't, but he got to a level where he could have a basic conversation. And I thought the method that he used in that video was fascinating, and it was very logical as well. So this guy his main approach, right, was to learn the most common words in the language, like the 150 to 200 mostly like the most used words in the language. And then after like creating flashcards from those and revising them, he went straight into like he took some private lessons, but also he went straight into like consuming media in Spanish. And I thought, oh, well, that's something I can actionably do. And it really inspired me. I saw it, I was like, I'm going to do it. So I downloaded a PDF and I downloaded an app called Anki, which is for creating flashcards. It's super, super basic, but it has like a spaced repetition algorithm in it. So you create flashcard sets, and then over days, it will show you the words that you struggle to recall. So I think that app is incredible. It's so basic, but it's incredible. If you hate flashcards, I mean, yeah, unlucky. But actually, a lot of the other language learning apps are based off of this idea of like spaced repetition, but Anki is like the most basic form of that. So I created an Anki deck from the top 150 to 200 most used words in Spanish. And the thing I did differently from Ikenna was I did consume a little bit of like basic media in Spanish, like kind of like cartoons and things like that for children, because the language is so basic in those cartoons that you can actually sometimes pick out how the grammar works and things like that. So yeah, I started off like that, and then I started talking straight away with natives using an app called Tandem. So Tandem is an incredible app. It basically partners you up with native speakers of the language that you want to learn, and then you can just talk to them either in the language you speak that they want to learn, or you speak to them in their language and they help you with corrections and stuff like that. So it's a really basic idea, but I think it's fantastic. I used it recently because I've started trying to pick up 2 other languages. I haven't been very committed to that, to be fair. I should probably try a lot harder. Maybe I'm going to commit to that. By the next podcast episode, I will I've learned some more Greek because that's a language I want to learn. So yeah, so this app partners you up, and where you go through like a list of people, and you message native speakers of the language you want to learn. And the idea is that you teach a little bit of your language, they teach their language, and you build together and you make friends. So you have like a text, like a pen pal, like exactly like a pen pal. Now, actually, having traveled through Latin America now, I've met a lot of the people that I used to talk to online, and had these incredible opportunities to like take my friends out for lunch, or like take my pen pal out for like whatever, like nights out, things like that. We ended up being really good friends. Like, for example, last weekend, I went traveling with a Venezuelan guy I've been talking to for years on Tandem. We met for the first time a few weeks ago, and we were like, let's go traveling. So we went to a little town called Villa de Leyva, and yeah, it was a great weekend. Great weekend. Fantastic opportunity. So I digress. This app is, for me, a complete key to unlock fluency in a language, because you get to practice with native speakers, and you're going to learn directly from the source, and that's really important. Now, let's talk about language learning apps, because there's one in particular that dominates this industry, called Duolingo. I hate Duolingo. Duolingo is, for me, a terrible app. For me, it doesn't work. I think it's too gamified. I think that it won't help you get fluent. I think that it's too commercial with the adverts and things like that. Everything seems to be behind a paywall, and it seems to block your learning at every opportunity. An app that I used instead while I was learning Spanish was Busuu. Busuu is, or was, I'm not sure if it still is, Busuu was an incredible app, and it had this amazing feature, right? So you take like a lesson in Spanish where it teach you some new words and some new grammar rules, and then you'd have to like produce something from the lesson. So it'd give you a prompt, and then you'd either write text, or you'd record yourself speaking something in Spanish, and then it would post it to a community, and native speakers of the language would correct you. Superb idea. What a fantastic idea, because you're going to get the native corrections. And honestly, I improved so much because of this app. The app itself is a lot tougher than Duolingo, right? The lessons are hard. They start off kind of easy, but you progress through like A1, A2, B1, B2. By B2, the lessons themselves are in Spanish, and the lessons are in your target language, so you have to understand what you're reading. And then they're teaching you new things in Spanish. It's tough, but it's a great way to learn, in my opinion. And that app, I'm not sure if it got bought out. Basically, it was like a startup app, and then it got bought out, so I'm not sure if it's still a good app. I'll have to do some research on that, but it used to be fantastic. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Busuu. It doesn't get enough love. And yeah, there's a couple of other good apps as well, like Closemaster to practice grammar. For pronunciation, Pimsleur, although it is a little expensive. Language Transfer is good for pronunciation, but it only has a few languages on it. Like, I think it has like Greek and Turkish. Not sure how many others it has. That's the thing, though. Some of the great apps only exist for like a very niche section of languages. Like, yeah, I was interested for a while in learning some Arabic, and finding resources to learn Arabic from English is really difficult. So yeah, these are some of the main tools that I used. And the whole time that I was taking lessons, I was talking to language exchanges. The majority of the time it was in English to start with, but then we practiced a bit of Spanish in between, and then slowly, you talk more and more in Spanish, until the point where you're sending voice notes in Spanish. So you're doing video calls in Spanish, and maybe it's slow, difficult to communicate. Maybe you don't understand things sometimes, and sometimes you're like, what are you saying? But people are very patient on these applications, in my experience. And yeah, it's fantastic. I learned a lot from some of these people, and they'll be friends of mine for life. And I'm so eternally grateful to these people. So, and this is actually one of the reasons that whenever I'm in a city like Medellin, or I haven't done it yet in Bogota actually, but I love going to language exchanges, because I love helping the locals learn English. In Medellin, I went a few times to a local language exchange, I met loads of Colombians who were all trying to practice English. And yeah, this is language exchange for me is such a beautiful concept. It's like we share, like I share what I know, you share what you know, and we build together. Everyone improves. Obviously, it can be a bit one-sided sometimes, but nowadays I speak language exchanges. I speak mostly in English to help others practice because I know what an effect that had on me when I was learning Spanish. So that's a few key tools for you to get started with. Definitely do some research on what apps are like currently good. I used to like Memrise, not that much actually. Memrise, Quizlet. That's another one that exists. I'd have to go back and check the market now because there's new ones popping up all the time. And nowadays, there's this whole new generation of like WhatsApp chatbots, and there's one called LangBuddy AI, and yeah, it works in WhatsApp, which is a really cool idea. So I actually had a chat with the creator the other day, and he was telling me about the project, how he got started and stuff. And he's a super cool guy, and that's a niche that I'm really interested in software. So yeah, language learning chatbots seem to be like they seem to be the future. And it's a great way to practice, and you could do it without the embarrassment of talking to a native speaker if that's something that would cause you a lot of embarrassment when you're getting started. But everyone knows you're a beginner, so don't worry. You can talk to native speakers as well, and you'll get that proper pronunciation as well if you talk to native speakers, which is so important. And yeah, you don't want to sound gringo all the time. That's a bit niche to Spanish, that word, gringo. So yeah, that's what they call me in the street here. Actually, I've got a funny story about that. So I get called gringo here because I'm white. I stand out a lot, quite tall. I don't look Colombian at all. Don't look Venezuelan either, or Peruvian. Don't look Latino. But the word they have for people with like light skin here is mono, and mono in Spanish means monkey. so, so I could be walking around and I get called mono. It's like, God, if it was like to someone of another skin color, imagine how offensive that would look. But yeah, it's okay. I don't take any offense at it. I don't take any offense at gringo either. You got to take it with a pinch of salt that there's history, and also it's not an insult. They're just calling you that because you look different. So yeah, language learning is a great opportunity to learn about new cultures, to make new friends. And honestly, as I said before, for me, one of the greatest things I've ever done, if not the greatest thing I've ever done, it's up there with just going solo traveling. The first time I went solo traveling, it opened so many doors for me in terms of confidence, and I learned a lot about myself. But I think it would have been so much harder as well if I didn't speak Spanish. And obviously I was traveling through countries that speak Spanish. But for me, yeah, speaking Spanish is the single greatest hobby that I ever built. And it's because of that I know I should pick up some more languages. And that's what a lot of people do, is they know that they want to learn another language. And I have a lot of friends who just keep up their Duolingo streaks, which is another reason that I kind of hate that app, I can't lie, is that it gives you like a false sense of progress. I know numerous people who have long Duolingo streaks but don't have any conversational ability in the language that they're learning. So that's kind of sad, honestly. The ways that I mentioned worked very well for me. I would just like to point out that they might not work for everyone. For me, this was super effective. I think practicing speaking is, in particular speaking, is the best way to learn a new language. Practicing speaking is so important because it forces you to think in real time, and then you kind of make those connections very quickly. But practicing, you need to have a balance of like input and output. And I remember I did a English teaching course and they talked about this. You need a balance of like reading and listening, and then you need to be able to produce as well. You need to write and speak as well. These are the key parts of learning a language. So you need to attend to all of those little points. Otherwise, you might listen to Spanish or listen to your target language and understand it, but not be able to speak. Or you might be able to speak and not understand maybe different dialects and things like that. So, yeah, I think if you keep in mind what I just said, input and output, if you keep in mind, just to reiterate, reading and listening, speaking and writing, Those are the 4 components to speaking a new language. If you balance all of those, you will learn. You just need to be consistent. It's going to take time. I'd say that I could hold a basic conversation to a decent level after about a year and a half. The first year, I thought I could speak really well, but I didn't really have the confidence, and I would only really speak after a few drinks in university. I had a Colombian housemate, and I'd only speak to him after a few drinks. But nowadays, it's not like that. And yeah, after, I'd say, if you could invest 18 months, you can get to like decent conversation ability, or at least be able to hold it down. And then I think at that point, you kind of, if you want to take that step up, the best way is to immerse yourself and go to the country, fully immerse yourself, or at least have such good friends in the language that you can speak to them in Spanish all the time. Oh, I keep saying Spanish. I mean your target language. Insert target language here. But yeah, I think if you have the opportunity to go to that country, that will like solidify your level. And because you'll be forced to speak it every single day. And when people don't understand you, I'm not sure how it is in other countries, but in Latin America, it's kind of like, huh? It's like if someone doesn't understand you, they'll make it very known that they don't understand you. And it's not like a brutal thing. It's just kind of like a lack of cultural understanding, I guess. Not many foreigners who aren't native speakers learn Spanish and travel to these places. So yeah, they're very used to foreigners coming here and trying to speak to them in English, and that's way worse. Don't be that person. At least if you're coming to Latin America, this is very tailored advice. If you're coming to Latin America, please learn the basics of Spanish. It goes such a long way, and if people know that you speak a little, it will make such a difference to how they communicate with you, and you'll get a much better experience as opposed to if you're trying to speak to them in English and you're using like cultural idioms or something like that. Like if you walk into a bakery and you're like, "Oh, can I get this bread?" Like, do you realize how? I don't think people realize how confusing that is. If you walk into like any shop and you use something like you use like a phrase that's very local or very non-standard English, that's very, very confusing for native speakers, and they've got to try and put on a good like customer service face for you, but they don't know, they might not understand what you're saying, and you might be asking something very simple but in a way that's kind of obscured. So if you are going to speak English, maybe stick to, please could I have, you know, not, oh yeah, can I get this, speak it super fast. And I've seen it happen too much. It is like that. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. I hope this might have inspired one or two of you at least to pick up a new language and to start learning and to put some time aside. I would say the main tip that I could give is just be consistent. As long as you're learning a little bit, practicing a little bit every day, that's going to work wonders. If you have the time to put aside to learn more, maybe if you could assign your lunch break every day at work to just review flashcards, talk to native speakers. The other great thing about a language exchange is it kind of holds you like accountable. So if you want to maintain a friendship or any type of like relationship with the person that you're talking with, any kind of rapport, you need to consistently talk. So that's going to force you to use your target language. And yeah, I mean, some people are kind of avoidant, and then I've had a number of exchanges before who, when we talk in English, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to speak in English," so they don't respond. That's part of it. Eventually, you will find a great exchange who, I've had 3 or 4 who have really, really, really helped me, and I'm so grateful to them. Yeah, incredible experience. Honestly, I'm so grateful. Thank you for listening, guys. I have a self-improvement group on Telegram. I forgot to mention this in the episode before. I created a self-improvement group on Telegram. I mentioned it in the personal manifesto episode, and I didn't mention it again. But yep, I have a alternative self-improvement group. If you're interested in seeing how you can personalize your self-improvement, personalize your growth, we'll talk about goals, we'll talk about everything. Join my Telegram group. Would love to meet some of you guys and see what things you're working on at the moment and what ambitions you have for the next 20 years. And maybe even if you did the personal manifesto exercise, if you haven't listened to that podcast episode, episode 2, I would recommend you check that out to help you plan goals for the future, for the far future, to help you put your life on the course that you want to be on. Thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you have an incredible day, night, wherever, whatever, wherever you're listening. And yeah, I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.